bringing Toyota into the sport is probably one of the things I'm most proud of in my entire business career, to be honest. It was a huge amount of work for Supercars and for WAU to manage to convince the world's largest, and in my opinion, best car company in the world to bring them into this category is enormous. We have the largest and probably most respected car company coming to race supercars in Australia. That's an incredible thing that we can say now.
This is the KTM Summer Grill. I'm Andrew Van Leeuwen, joined by Stefan Bartholomaeus and Ryan Walken Shore, who is part owner of Walkinshaw Andretti United, current front-running supercars team, soon to be Toyota homologation team, so plenty to talk about. Ryan, thank you for joining us. Let's start with the 2024 season. What's your report card, I guess?
Yeah, difficult one, because we actually had a pretty good season, one of our best seasons we've had in a long time. We've been sort of floating around sort of third in the championship with Chaz for a little while, but we certainly haven't had a teams championship like we've had this year for quite some time. Last 2 years with Chaz and Nick were very poor from a team championship perspective, and previously with Bryce Forward and Chaz as well, we didn't really get very far either. So bringing Woody on board allowed us to be far more competitive with the second car in our team. So that, alongside with Chaz, bumped us up to third in the teams. It was a big improvement on where we've been. Chaz was having a great season, and then sort of from Sandown onwards, it sort of went downhill a little bit, which is really disappointing, because I think we're only about 80 points behind Will in the championship at that point, in second place. And then Sandown was a disaster for us, and we haven't had a round that bad for quite some time. Just everything just seemed to go wrong. And then Bathurst was unusually lukewarm. We still came in the top 5 with Chaz, but that wasn't enough to really try and bridge the gap between him and Will. And then Gold Coast was pretty poor, and then it went into Adelaide, which was disappointing on one day, no fault of our own. And the second day was obviously a lot better, but we thought we should have won that. So a bit up and down towards the back end of the season, which is disappointing. And that ultimately didn't allow Chaz to really have a competitive foot in the door to try and push on the championship. I think the point was that we were fighting for the championship up until that point, which is a good place to be, and it's where we want to be fighting. So Chaz had a good season, just unfortunately unwound at the end a little bit faster than we would have liked, but a lot of learnings in that as well. I think for Woody, a great first season in the category, one of the best first seasons we've seen for a rookie in a while. Probably him and Brock have both been the two rookies that have had two of the best seasons we've seen in a little while. So he's been a great addition to our team. He's done some really, really good things for his first year, and has shown a lot of promise. So really excited to see how he goes next year. He's done pretty much everything that we wanted him to do this year. He's had a bit of misfortune as well, unfortunately, but really shown us what he's capable of. So I think what it does allow us to do is to build on that platform from next year. We know we've got a strong team, we've got 2 strong drivers. Chaz is in the prime of his career. We've got to make sure that we give him a car, continue to give him a car next year that he's going to be competitive with. And just make sure that in the back end we tidy a few things up so we don't have some of the mishaps that happen at the back end of this season.
Do you sort of find that, I guess there's been peaks and troughs in form over the last few years as you've been through this rebuilding phase, but the closer you kind of get to getting it right more often than not, the more the troughs stand out, I suppose? Is that sort of the good news, that the bad weekends hurt more because the expectation is that we should be right at the front, particularly with car 25?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll use car 25 as the example, because we've not been expecting Woody to be competing for a championship in his first competitive season in the category. So focusing purely on car 25, when there's not very much to complain about because you're doing a really, really good job, when all of a sudden you do a bad job, it's far more obvious, and that's what we saw towards the back end of this season. I mean, Chaz has been in the top 3 in the championship for the last few seasons. He's won Bathurst and been on the podium at Bathurst the last few years as well, but What we really want to get is finally get him his first drivers' championship, and he's been nearly there, but he probably hasn't been in the last few years. Even though he's been competitive and finished in the top three, he's not really been fighting for that trophy. Whereas this year he was. So, now that we've got that sort of taste in our mouths, that we want to go and we feel we're in the position we can go and fight for that properly. It does hurt more, and especially when it's your own doing. There's some things that went against us. We had some unbelievably bad luck at the end of last year, but that's motorsport, that's sport in general. You can't choose where the ball bounces sometimes, and sometimes it bounces towards you into your hands, sometimes it bounces away from you. But there were too many mistakes at the back end of the season which hurt us, and they were, mistakes that weren't typical throughout the rest of the season. So there is some tidying up to do. We'll focus on that in the off season and try and come back stronger next year.
Chaz ended the season by winning a bunch of awards at the gala there, the Barry Sheen, the Jim Richards, and he also picked up the most popular driver as voted for by the fans. How important is his character in terms of driving culture and lifting the team and keeping it going through some of those rough patches?
Yeah, it's enormous. Chaz is the most professional driver I've ever worked with. He's a fantastic asset in the team. He's the fan favourite. He's the most popular driver in the sport, and he's probably the most popular driver within people in the sport as well, including the other drivers. So, and that's what we've seen through his awards. He's a great ambassador for the sport. He's a great ambassador for our team, and a great ambassador for our partners. The value that we get from Chaz off track is second to none. Our partners will love him. But your point about culture is really, really important, because when you do have these sort of mistakes, and there's always easy people you can blame and point fingers to. But Chaz, who's at some point at the end of the last season, the most frustrated because he sees championship hopes starting to slip through his fingers a little bit, through no fault of his own personally. But the way that he reacted, the way he responded, the way that it was all for one and one for all sort of thing, that mentality is really, really strong, and that's what defines us as a team. We're a very, very strong group. We work very well together. We don't throw blame and point fingers. Some days the driver loses a race, some days the team lose a race for the driver. But whatever happens, we all lose together, we all win together. And Chaz drives that mentality in our team forward very, very strongly, and Woody does as well. And we're lucky to have a driver like him, because we haven't had drivers like that in the past, even recently. So having two drivers like we have currently has been a real positive shift for our team, and I think that's one of the reasons that you've seen the performance take that next step up this season compared to the last few seasons. Is two drivers working well together, trying to help each other, working well with the team. The culture is really, really strong, and that's what you need if you want to go and win championships.
The big news, obviously, for you guys this year, and really for the sport, was this Toyota deal, bringing them into the championship in 2026. Is that homologation team status really what you need to take that next step and actually be champions again?
Well, actually, how many teams who haven't had some form of serious factory backing or being homologation teams won championships in the last 20 years in supercars? There's some outliers, but there's not many. Certainly, if you want to win championships consistently, having that extra budget and that extra support and the control over your own destiny is very, very, very important. Just because you have that, those benefits and those assets doesn't mean that you're going to be very, very competitive. And without wanting to cast any shade upon DJR, but a prime example is those guys recently, Ford homologation team for the last 2 seasons, but we've beaten them, and we're not in we're not the Ford homologation team. So just because you have those benefits doesn't mean that you're going to be able to utilize them to be able to be competitive. But historically they have been. If you look at Red Bull, obviously historically they've been very, very strong as well, and you've seen that bouncing around throughout the last sort of 20 years of the sport. So it does make a huge difference, especially if you want to consistently win championships. Bringing Toyota into the sport is probably one of the things I'm most proud of in my entire business career, to be honest. It was a huge amount of work for Supercars and for WAU to manage to convince the world's largest, and in my opinion best car company in the world, to bring them into this category is enormous. We have the largest and probably most respected car company coming to race supercars in Australia. That's an incredible thing that we can say now, and something that the sport and the fans and all of us at WAU are and should be incredibly proud of. there's an enormous amount of work that goes into it, but just getting us to this point was huge, and yeah, it's something that everyone should be very very thankful for, particularly to Supercars, the work that went in from Supercars over the last 12 to 18 months to do that, particularly from Shane Howard and Neil Crompton. That's an enormous amount of effort, and it wouldn't have happened without them. So from a WAU perspective, obviously really, really important. We've always wanted to be a homologation team. It's in our DNA. It's what we've wanted ever since we ceased being the Holden Racing team. We know that with that comes a higher chance of winning championships, but just having that asset as part of our brand and part of our culture and part of our team, it's really, really important. It's great for driving partnerships into the team. It's a great selling point for partners, but also for personnel and for drivers as well into the future. People want to go and be parts of these sort of teams. They want to be part of something bigger, and so it's a huge asset, and we're very, very excited about it.
There's probably a little bit of confusion, I guess, just around the messaging from Toyota at the moment regarding the future of the Supra, the A90, as it's codenamed. The production will end at the end of 2025. Is your expectation that the shape that we've seen already will race at least for some period of time in supercars before whatever Toyota does next comes along?
Yeah, it's not really a question for me. It's a question for Toyota. But Toyota, some of the smartest guys in the room. I think it's fair to say that they wouldn't have done this without knowing what their future looks like. But that's a question for them, not for us. But we're very comfortable. We know what's happening, and can't wait.
How have your dealings with Sean Hanley been so far? He's a sort of larger-than-life personality. I think he's going to be a fun addition to the supercars world.
Yeah, Sean's great. He's a great character, and it's so often you end up dealing with these very, very large automotive corporates, and sometimes to get to the top of these places, having a big, character like Sean has is more of a detriment than a benefit. So it's quite rare to see someone who's as larger than life as Sean is. But he's very, very funny, very, very smart man. Clearly, it's been great working with him recently, and very, very excited to have him in the sport. He's a great ambassador and speaks very, very well on behalf of Toyota, but he's just got the right intentions. He wants to do things right by the sport. He knows that it's a community and an ecosystem where everyone needs to work together in order to extract the value to the maximum. So having that kind of professional and open mindset, I think, is really, really important. But he's pretty funny. I'm sure you guys will have some pretty good interviews with him in the future.
We've already got that off to a good start after he was doing the rounds at Bathurst. Obviously, the Walkinshaw name has such an amazing legacy, because of the amazing things that your old man did in the sport in both Australia and around the world. Is this just an amazing opportunity for yourself to add to that legacy, to bring the world's biggest car maker into a category that means so much to the Walkinshaw family in general? I mean, that must be a special feeling that you're going to get to be involved in that.
Yeah, no, and you're right. And if you look at sort of my career since taking over after my father died, and that's well over a decade now, the wins we've had off the racetrack, if you know what I mean, in our automotive business have been significant. We've grown from a company that was doing 2,000 cars a year to a company that's doing 15,000 cars a year, from one manufacturer to six, with more incoming, from a couple of hundred employees to over 1,500, and with lots more growth ahead of us. And those accomplishments I'm very, very proud of. But the one thing I've not managed to do yet is win a supercar championship. It's been frustrating as hell, and has eaten me up a lot. So I think I'm not doing it for trying to prove anyone wrong or anything else like that. You know me, I don't give a fuck what other people think. But what I do want to do is do what's right for my team. And there's a lot of people in this team that have worked really, really hard to get us back to where we are today. And there's a lot of people who've been around all the way since going back to the Holden Racing team years. And I feel a debt and some ownership on trying to make sure that for everyone who's been a part of that journey, that we end up getting the results that we all feel that we're capable of. And there's a lot of people in that team that deserve to finish the season, with photographs holding that championship trophy. And I'm very, very excited about bringing Toyota in the sport, but I'll be even more excited when we've got a Supra from WAU that finishes the Supercar championship on the top of the table, and everyone in the team gets the reward that we've all been working so hard for. that's more important.
Obviously, there's a lot of work involved in homologating a new supercar model. How are you going to balance that with still running the race team and trying to win the championship still with Ford next year?
Yeah, look, that's a good question, and look, that's going to be difficult. But Triple Eight managed to do it. There's no reason why we can't either. We've got the resources and the capability. Carl Foes, as our team principal, this is in his wheelhouse. He's developed these kind of programs several times before for British Touring Car Championship. Doing these sort of aero and engine programs, this is bread and butter. We've got a great engine department already. Thankfully, we didn't close that down, and we kept it on a lifeline really for the last couple of years whilst we've been with Ford, because we felt that at some point in the future we would need it again, and thankfully we did keep that going, because that would have made this entire process a lot harder. Thankfully, having that engine department still part of our capability was really, really critical, and that will make the whole process a lot easier. There's an enormous amount of work. Supercars are putting a huge amount of work into that. Toyota will do as well. We're in a good place at the moment, but the really, really hard work starts next year. So balancing when you're trying to fight for a championship and trying to develop the car, it's something we have planned. We're comfortable with it. We've hired some additional personnel to be able to help some of that workload. And fortunately, we're in a position where we've got the largest car company on the planet as our as holding our hand in this as well, and giving us support when we need it. And Supercars as well. Supercars have put a lot of work into the previous two programs, and for Mustang and for Camaro, so they'll be doing a lot of work helping us as well. So I think between those three different stakeholders in this program, I think we're in a pretty good place. So ultimately, the key priorities are making sure that we've got a car that's competitive, that parity is achieved, and that it's reliable. And so we've got to hit those three key points, and if we do that, then the program will have been a success, and then we've just got to go and race the thing and try and win with it.
You mentioned the parity word there, and obviously a big role of Supercars in the process is going to be to get the parity right. How confident are you after the sort of trauma of what we've seen early in Gen 3 that can be done effectively?
Yeah, look, a lot more confident than I was 2 years ago, that's for sure. Look, sending the car to the wind tunnel, absolutely. We should have done that first time round. It's easy to say things in hindsight, enormous amount of cost in it. And those old systems that we had previously worked very, very well for us. But as I've said several times, why those things worked well for us previously is that whilst being inaccurate in their ability to be able to give you full parity, particularly with aero, we had the ability to develop parts. So if you had an aero difference in, let's say, the mid-corner between a Falcon and a Commodore, you could kind of design and engineer your way around those problems so that you just had to be close enough in a window of parity that it would make sense and it could work together. And then you sort of let the teams go and fight it out with the other areas of the car that you could actually had some freedoms over to be able to fill in those gaps. And both cars always had positives and negatives. They were never really paritized like we're trying to get today. But now that the chassis is all the same and we've got such a limited amount of freedoms, the parity needs to be perfect, because just having a tiny percentage of a difference is the difference between being first and fifth. And to do that, you need to mature your tool set and make sure that you're using best practice, and that's what the wind tunnel does. That's what transient dyno testing does with the engine as well. So now that we have those two systems there that we can use in our toolbox to be able to ensure that we have parity. Look, there's still human beings involved. Human beings make mistakes. They always will do. You can't remove that kind of variable. What you can do is limit it as much as possible, and using those two systems as your platform to try and get parities gives us a lot of comfort that we can get it right. And if you look at this season, for example, compared to last season, an enormous change. Last season, well, not last season, the season before last was a complete disaster when it came to parity, and it was a really, really tough year. This year, it may not be 100% perfect, but it's pretty bloody close. And we've seen that with the lap times, we've seen it with the performance, we've seen it with qualifying, we've seen it with massive mixture of different drivers winning races and getting pole positions, which is what you want. That's why you want to have parity, so it gives everyone a fair chance. And I think we're very, very, very close enough that it probably doesn't warrant having a discussion about it anymore. So as long as we can hit the same marks that we have currently for the Camaro and the Mustang, then I'll be happy. It gives us a fair chance to win, and that's all that matters.
When you say that, but you also mentioned the word lukewarm when it comes to the Bathurst 1000, that seemed to be where the Camaro was still a little bit better, is that still a source of frustration for the Ford teams if you just put your Ford team hat back on for a second?
Yeah, it does. I put my Ford team hat on. Yeah, it's really, really frustrating from a Ford team because it does appear that there is a slight difference at Bathurst. But again, we are talking tiny amounts. And then, the way that we have to set up our car gives us the opportunity to be faster over the top of the mountain. But we all know that you need to be fast down the mountain, going up the mountain. That's where you can actually pass cars. If you're not fast on those two straights, there's nowhere else to pass. So it does make that a little bit frustrating. It's very, very close, though. I mean, we know it's close. We look at the lap times. It is close. Without being able to say point blank, I'd say that there is a slight benefit to being in a Camaro. Look, let me put it like this. If I was going in completely brand agnostic to Bathurst, I would choose a Camaro over a Ford for that race. And I think most people down pit lane would agree with that same conclusion. But it is a tiny little difference. But then at other tracks, you'd probably say, I prefer the Ford. So there is pluses and minuses depending on what track you're on, which is what you want. But obviously, Bathurst is the one everyone looks at because Bathurst is the only race you want to win all year. It's the most prestigious one on our calendar. So that's the one that always, makes that difference more frustrating. Yeah, but I don't think that it warrants discussion that there's a parity issue. I just think that both those cars have got slightly different traits and slightly different benefits at different tracks, but it is marginal.
Now that we know how complicated the process is in the Gen 3 era of getting this right, does that place additional emphasis on when you would like to have a Supra on track at some point? Because there's obviously different pillars of getting this right, which is running the car on the track, doing the wind tunnel testing, doing transient dyno testing, all that sort of stuff. Do you have a timeline for when you would like to see a Supra out there on track to begin that development work?
Yep, we do. We've got our own internal timelines. I'm not going to share that with you guys though, because I was going to end up with my foot in my mouth if we get those wrong. Because ultimately, there's a lot of things outside our control, right? We're dealing with just in Toyota alone, we're dealing with 6 different agencies and groups. It is hard. There's going to be things that slow us down. There's things that we're going to have to work on. So by mid-year, we definitely want to have a car on track. That's around that sort of time. But whether it's May or August is going to depend on variables, and most of those variables will actually be out of our control. It'll be trying to get people from all over the world all working together and getting things done. So fingers crossed. So far it's been okay, but these things do have delays, so I'm not going to pretend that we're going to be confirming we're going to get it out in May or June or July or August, because that would be silly. It'll be out when it's finished and when it's ready, and that will be the fastest that we'll have been possibly able to get it out, because everyone's motivated to do so.
Do you already have a chassis built that is earmarked to become the first Supra?
No, we will be developing new chassis for 2026.
Will that be an in-house program?
Yep. Yeah, we have our own chassis. We do our own chassis in-house. Yep.
One of the question marks yet to be answered about the Toyota deal is what other teams will be running Toyotas, whether it's a second team or 2 more teams. Will you be involved in that process?
We are involved in that process. We're giving Toyota some guidance on our thoughts. Ultimately, it has to be someone that we can work with, because it's us that are leading the program. So we need to make sure it's teams that we feel are going to add value and that we can work with on and off track. And they've got the right cultural fit as well for Toyota and for us, because there's some teams that fit the Toyota mold more than others in pit lane. I won't name anyone, obviously. But I think Toyota have got a pretty good idea of who they want, and ultimately that decision will be made as soon as Toyota make it. But we've given our views, and Toyota may ultimately make the decision on who they want to represent them on track. It's their brand, and it's their program. So we've given our guidance and our views, but they make the decision.
Just to bring the conversation back to this year again, you spoke about Ryan Wood before. You spoke very positively about him, which I think is a really good thing, because as a rookie, obviously, sometimes separating the inconsistency, like for a guy coming into the championship, it's always going to be hard. It seems that you've got a good handle on the good. You can separate the good from, the odd bad day that's going to happen for a young guy.
Yeah, of course. Look, no one's expecting you as a rookie to come in and start winning races and smashing everyone up and having a perfect season. So he's shown he's got raw talent, raw speed. That's what we want. He's shown that he's very, very good off track with our commercial partners and within our team as well. So he's ticked all the boxes of what our expectations were. He's shown he's got a lot of talent, a lot of speed. We're very, very confident that he's a driver that's going to win races and fight for championships in the future. So he's been a great find, and that's why we've re-signed him. So he's going to be around for a little while.
And was that re-signing, was that a sort of purposeful thing about saying to him, hey, like, go out there and learn and take risks and kind of, try and be fast when you want to be fast, don't worry about trying to be consistent? Is it about offering him the freedom to develop in the way that he wants to?
There's a little bit of that, but it's also other people sniffing around him asking when his contract's done because they wanted to sign him up. So it's a bit of both, to be honest. Yeah, we're trying to protect ourselves whilst also giving him the comfort that we're supporting him for the long term. So mixture of both.
WAU also won the Super 2 title this year with Zach Bates, and this WAU Academy program goes across Super 2 and the Toyota Series as well. Is that part of the business that you enjoy, seeing talent flowing up through the levels?
Yeah, it is, and it's actually a key point for why Toyota chose us and also want to be involved in supercars, because they've done a lot of investment, a lot of great work with the 86 series, and it's frustrating when those guys are blooded in that series with Toyota and then they go off and drive for other brands and win supercar championships with other brands, and they get all the credit. So having that conveyor belt from 86 into Super 2 into supercars is really, really important, not only for us but for Toyota, and that's one of the key objectives of their program, and it's something we're going to be working very, very hard on. So great to get the success in Super 2. Those guys have worked really, really hard. First Super 2 championship in a very, very long time for us, and the first championship we've had since obviously restarting our team as Walken Shore Andretti United. So really, really proud moment for us and the team. It's been a really, really good season for those guys. Bates's a really, really decent driver, got lots of talent clearly, and excited to see what he does in the future.
Well, Ryan, thanks for joining us on the KTM Summer Grill. We're really excited to see what happens in 2025 in terms of both what you can achieve with the race team and what we're going to see out of the Toyota program. So best of luck with all of that.
Awesome. Cheers, gents. Thank you very much for having me on board. Have a good holiday.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the KTM Summer Grill. With each episode, we are giving away one of these cool KTM goodie bags. Don't miss your chance to win. If you're watching via Speed Cafe, enter your details below. If you're watching on YouTube, the link is in the description.